Off the man over my shoulder, Dan Lloyd, currently getting into his car right now, leading the championship by a whopping 31 points, but it is catchable. So 31 points that was going into qualifying. Like I say, he could have won it last time out at Croft, but didn't. And here's what happened.
Andreas Beckman with the fastest lap in qualifying, 6/10 clear of Oliver Taylor. Dan Lloyd will start from the back of the grid after a 5-place grid penalty for contact at Donington Park last time around. The revs start to rise, the lights go out, we're away and racing, and it's a good start by the looks of it from Beckman from pole position. Ollie Taylor, I think he's going to have to stop going to second position. Finley Crocker's made a good start behind as well, and Jessica Beckman going backwards slightly as they head down in towards Curve over for the first time. Beckman leads the way, Taylor second line, third, Crocker into fourth, and Dan Lloyd is already fifth. Dan Lloyd has had a mega start and has got past 3 cars already. Through the complex we come for the first time of Bassett. There is the man on the move. Dan Lloyd into 4th position. But remember, to wrap up the title here today, he has to outscore Ollie Taylor. He can't finish behind him, so he has to get in front of the man that is currently running second in the race if he wants to take the title here at Croft, rather than having it go right down to the wire at Donington Park. Dan Lloyd is back up the inside of Stuart Lyons, and this time might have done it. Oh, there's more contact, and Stuart Lyons is off! Stuart Lyons off into the field. I think he's broken the front suspension on the Cupra. There was contact between these two once again. Let us not forget, though, in the midst of all of this battling going on behind the championship, Andreas Beckman is potentially only a lap away from his first ever TCR race victory. But all eyes are on this fight for second place. He's forcing Ollie to defend heavily down towards the complex. Again, he thought about going up the inside of the hairpin. Taylor runs out wide though, and this is Dan Lloyd's opportunity. He gets up the inside line. Taylor will have to fight him down towards turn number 1, but Ollie will have the inside line for the corner. Another drag race across the start-finish line. Officially, as they cross the timing lead, Dan Lloyd was 67 thousandths of a second behind, but he's on the wrong side of the road into the braking zone. Taylor on the inside, clicks the curve and stays in front. Great driving from Ollie Taylor there. This is the first victory in TCR UK for Andreas Beckman, a fantastic lights-to-flag victory for the Swedish driver. What is going to happen for second position? It's going to be Ollie Taylor, I think. Ollie Taylor flashes the lights, and that was a pivotal result because he takes 5 more valuable championship points out of Dan Lloyd. The second race of the weekend here at Croft. Ollie Taylor lines up on pole position with the similar car of Finley Crocker alongside him. 5th on the grid is the championship leader, Daniel Lloyd. The final race of the weekend here from Croft is about to get underway. The lights go out, we're away and racing, and Ollie Taylor makes a good start from pole position. Not such a good start from Finley Crocker though, so Andreas Beckman may be able to challenge him down towards turn 1. No, I think Crocker will hang on, so it's now down to the 3 West Coast racing cars to sort it out for 3rd position. Andreas on the inside, Jessica on the outside, and Dan Lloyd slips on the inside of his teammate Lewis Kent is in there as well, trying to follow him through. So it's Taylor that leads the way, it's Crocker second, Andreas Beckman is 3rd, Dan Lloyd making 1 position. Oh, Dan Lloyd's off! Dan Lloyd off onto the grass, I don't believe it! Now it is imperative that Ollie Taylor wins this race, because if he wins it, he takes 40 points out of that 71-point cushion that is currently enjoyed by Dan Lloyd. Dan is not going to score, and Ollie Taylor is scarpering away up the road. There is Lewis Kent in the pit lane, and we are hearing it's possibly a puncture. That's it. Oh yes, there's no possibly about it. That tyre is definitely punctured. It's the fight for second place that is providing most of the entertainment, because Ollie Taylor is looking ever more comfortable out in front now, 3.7 seconds ahead of Finley Crocker and Andreas Beckman behind. Finley Crocker is really having to make this Honda Civic a very, very wide one indeed, because he's got the older shape Civic breathing down his neck now. With a race victory here at Croft in race number 2, Ollie Taylor moves himself right into championship contention.
Yes, very much into contention. I was just looking into the eyes of Ollie Taylor as they all left the pit. Ollie looking extremely focused. They've had a lot to contend with. Of course, we're running slightly late here at Donington Park due to an incident in one of the support races earlier on, coupled with this pretty nasty weather. A lot of standing water out on track as well. So there's a lot for them to put up with out on track. It's going to be extremely tense. And there are quite a lot of points available in qualifying too. As I say, 31 points was the difference coming into this race weekend. There are points available in qualifying, and here's what happened yesterday.
With blustery conditions and the threat of rain a real possibility, the drivers were keen to get on track as soon as possible for the final qualifying session of the year. Croft winner Andreas Beckman set the early pace in his West Coast Racing VW Golf. championship hopeful Ollie Taylor got straight down to business in his Pyro Motorsport Honda Civic. But it wasn't long before points leader Dan Lloyd lit up the timing screens in his West Coast Racing Golf, quickest by some distance. And life was about to get even more difficult for Taylor, as Jess Beckman broke into the top 3, pushing Ollie down to 4th place. Meanwhile, the next 4 cars were covered by less than 0.2 of a second, with Stuart Lyons ultimately claiming 5th spot in the Maximum Motorsport prepared Cupra. Darrell Wilson was just 97 thousandths of a second adrift and completed the top 6. With few improvements to times in the final 10 minutes of the session, it was a West Coast Racing 1-2-3, with Dan Lloyd taking pole position here at Donington by 0.3 of a second.
Perfect start to the weekend. It's what we planned on doing. We didn't want to play any games this weekend with a reverse grid. We just wanted to do maximum attack, go for pole, go for the maximum points, and see where we ended up. And West Coast Racing had done an unbelievable job. So yeah, great start to the weekend.
Second quickest on his first ever visit to Donington Park was the impressive Andreas Beckman.
I had to push a lot through the qualifying to get my lap time, and it was also very close also with Jessica and Dan, so I wanted to do my best laps I could, but I'm really pleased with qualifying. Second place and had a team in 1-2-3 was really funny.
But a frustrating session for Ollie Taylor puts him 4th on the grid for race 1, 3 places behind his title rival.
Just didn't really have an answer for Dan and Andreas and Jessica. Obviously, the balance of performance this weekend, they're running considerably lighter. I think they're about 60 kilos lighter than I was. And just looking at the pace against the other Hondas, didn't do too badly there. I'm not disappointed with that, but 4th obviously is a bit of a shame to get that result. There's obviously some points given away there, and this weekend we want to capture as many points as we can. But yeah, ultimately I'm happy with my performance, and I think that was the best we were going to do, really.
With Lloyd scoring 11 points for pole and Taylor 7 for qualifying 4th, it means that Lloyd will go into the first race of the weekend with a 35-point lead in the championship. With just 80 points still available over the 2 races, Taylor has work to do if he's to take the championship down to the wire.
Yes, indeed. What a qualifying session it was too. Dan has just pulled up alongside me. We'll get a word with him in just a few seconds' time. Ollie, a few cars back, 4th on the grid there. It went as well as he could have hoped for, really, in qualifying, because he's got an extra bit of weight that he was talking about to me a little bit earlier on, in fact. So let's just get a quick word with Dan. Try and get his window down as well. But Dan, we've spoken a number of times over this weekend about what's going ahead of you, and at the moment, looking ahead of you, it's a nice open track.
Yeah, long day, hey, for everyone. It's such a shame for all the fans that have come along and people who've been waiting to watch. But you know, at least we're getting on with it, and I'm glad we're getting to this race. It'd be such a shame if it was cancelled. So yeah, guys have done a good job to make sure we're out here. So head in the game now, make sure I get a good start, and yeah, crack on.
And I'll tell you all about what happened and the reasons that Dan's talking about in a little bit of time. But ahead of you, you've got this open track. You know that you need to really just win this race and you've won the title. It's nice and easy, isn't it?
Easy as that, yeah, exactly. I mean, I've got the best view. It's nice to have no one in front. Been a lot of hard work put in this year. Great job by the West Coast Racing team and from our supporters as well. So it'd be nice just to end on a high, get the job done properly, and get what we think we deserve.
Yeah. And actually, as a team working together, you've got your 2 teammates directly behind you there, and I'm sure they're going to make life very, very hard for Ollie, but I also know they're going to race their own race.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in a nice position. They're there. It's better than having Ollie on the front row for sure. Hopefully, they've got good pace, and yeah, what more can I ask for? The guys did a great job yesterday, which was perfect for me as well. So I'm just excited. I've been excited for this day for ages. I don't feel nervous. I just want to crack on and get racing.
Good stuff. Well, I'll let you get your mind on it.
Thank you.
Good luck, Dan. So let's go and get the other driver in this title battle, shall we? And I'm going to try and grab hold of Ollie as quickly as we can. So Dan was talking about good that we're out on track, and that was because of an incident earlier on in one of the support races. It had quite a knock-on effect, and the track is very, very greasy. So it's one of those very, very tricky things. But we are out on track. The team have worked very, very hard. The marshals and all the rest of them worked extremely hard to get this up and running. And as I peer through here, Ollie Taylor, who's got his mind very much on what's going ahead of him. But Ollie, looking ahead, you've got to get through a few Swedes before you can get past Dan, but I know you're going to be chomping at the bit.
Yeah, definitely. Always comfortable in the wet, but I've got short race distance now because of the problems earlier, so I haven't got any time to lose, really. Need to get a good start, and yeah, try and get onto the back of Dan as soon as we can. First real wet race of the year, really. So we don't really know anyone's pace in the wet. Obviously, the wet's going to help the weight disadvantage that we're carrying to the Golfs. That will play into our hands. But yeah, just need to get off the line. Hopefully, there's no carnage. Everyone can stay calm for a little while and get the race underway. And yeah, see what we can do.
But you're in a fairly nice position that you've got nothing really to lose. Go for it, go for it, go for it, and you've got all to gain. Yeah,
definitely. We need to really push to keep any sort of championship alive to get into race 2. But at the same time, obviously, need to be careful. Can't be too gun ho. It's going to be tricky, but it's definitely going to be fun. We want a few more wins before the year is out.
Well, we'll be watching, and fingers crossed for you too.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, and good luck to Ollie Taylor. So as they get that webbing back up, we'll head slightly up further down the grid as well. You can see everybody is well, quite nervous, excited. The track conditions today have been very, very tricky. It is so wet out there, and they're all on their wet tyre setup. It's a full wet race, and we're expecting a lot of drama out on track. Just to put it in some kind of perspective for you, Dan Lloyd, if he wins this race, no matter what happens, he will win the title. Okay, so if he wins the race today, Ollie can be second, but on count back, Dan will win the title, barring any anything else happening, any conversations, that may happen after a race if there's any incidents. So we'll watch it, see what happens. Ollie's got all to play for. He's got to fight to the front. He's got to try and get past Dan. If Ollie finishes ahead of Dan, the title will still be up for grabs. Andy, this one is going to be a very exciting race, a very tense race, a very wet race as well, except for you, because you are lovely and dry in the warm commentary box. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Bryn. Go and find yourself somewhere dry-ish to hide whilst the race is underway. But yeah, this is going to be very, very tense indeed. 15 minutes is the duration of both of our TCR UK races here today as a result of the delays that we've been talking about earlier on in the day. So short, sharp races, no real time to breathe, no real time to sort of take stock of the situation. And for Dan and Ollie, this championship battle is very much still alive. Essentially, if they're inside the top 4, because there are slightly bigger point increments between each position within the top 4, 5 points in fact difference between first and second, then second and third, and then third and fourth. So if they're anywhere within the top 4, then Dan only needs to beat Ollie by one position on the track, and he will be champion. If they're outside of the top 4, then it's a bit different. Actually, Ollie can then afford to finish just behind Dan, and mathematically it would still be alive. But of course, realistically, for Ollie Taylor to have any chance of winning the championship this afternoon, a race victory in this first race is really the bare minimum that he can ask for, and then really just hope that that fate provides him with an opportunity to take a decent haul of points out of Dan Lloyd. Dan has proven, though, that he's not untouchable. He's been beaten fair and square on the track by Ollie on a couple of occasions this year. Of course, Dan's supreme finishing rate came under fire at Croft last time out as well, when he had that suspension failure, which put him out of the race, and Ollie, of course, went on to win that one as well. So anything can happen. Throw in the fact that, as Ollie was saying there down on the grid, this is the first wet race we've ever had in TCR UK. We had a bit of a damp track at Silverstone, I seem to remember, back in April at the start of the season, but that was not full wet. They were all out on slick tyres. Well, this is definitely a wet track. As such, because the conditions have changed from yesterday, they will get 2 green flag laps, the first of which is getting underway now. Dan Lloyd leads his West Coast Racing teammates off the line. This is actually as dominant as West Coast are perceived to have been this year. This is actually the first time they've locked out the top 3 positions on the grid, so great job by West Coast Racing, and what a time to do it, because the Beckman siblings are there looking for their own results, of course, but they are in a position where they can help Dan, because even if Ollie Taylor does eventually get past them, if they can hold him back for a few laps, that takes the pressure off the race leader. There is our race 2 pole sitter, thinking to further ahead in the afternoon. Carl Swift has taken pole position for race number 2, but race number 1 will be starting down in 8th position on the grid. But yeah, this is going to be a fascinating race. You can see the conditions there down at Crane Curves. It's not terrible. Oh, that's a shame though. Darryl Wilson's Vauxhall Astra has not left the line and appears to be in the process of being pushed into the pit lane. I think, yes, they've opened the gap in the wall on the pit lane, so Darrell Wilson's car, unfortunately, will not be, it would appear, out there to take the start. Now, it may just be there's some water in the electrics somewhere. Maybe they can get it fired up in the pit lane. He's got the time that it takes to do 2 green flag laps, remember, to try and get the problem solved. If they get the car fired up, then they may be able to send him out from the pit lane, but that is a shame for Darrell, who's been plagued with mechanical issues this year, and we haven't really yet seen the full potential of Darrell in the Vauxhall. The car, in fact, is going to be pushed onto the grass by the looks of it down the pit straight, so he will not be taking any part in this one, it would appear. And the marshals, who have had quite a lot to do already today, having to push the car across the grass. Now, I've got a glimpse there of Jessica Beckman's car. It looks like already she's got a bit of damage. Yes, she has, hasn't she? So Jessica Beckman, that front left corner, there's bodywork flapping loose. Now, how on earth that's happened, I don't know, because they haven't actually gone racing yet. This is the second green flag lap beginning now. And Jessica Beckman with some form of damage. It won't affect her performance. I think it's just that little bit of bodywork has snapped on the bottom, hasn't it? And hopefully won't affect her performance too much, but that will be of slight concern, I'm sure. Right, here is confirmation of the grid then. West Coast Racing 1, 2, 3, with championship leader Dan Lloyd on pole position. Andreas Beckman is second alongside him, with Jessica Beckman on row 2, and Ollie Taylor for company. Ollie Taylor has to try and win this race realistically to keep his championship hopes alive. Stuart Lyons is 5th, had a really good qualifying session, a great battle with Stuart, Darrell, who unfortunately will not be there in the Astra, Finley Crocker as well. They were all very close together for 5th. Then you've got Carl Swift, Lewis Kent is on the 5th row of the grid. Welcome back to Josh Price as well, who makes a welcome return to the championship, having last been out at Brands Hatch. And likewise, Sean Walkinshaw, who we saw in the SWR car back at Knock Hill earlier on in the season, the car that's been driven by a few different drivers this year, actually. It is the very same car in which Andreas Beckman won a race at Croft last time out, when the West Coast racing cars were sort of being competed in Sweden and in the UK. They were down a Golf, so they stuck Andreas in the Civic, and he won in the FK2 shaped Civic, showing that there's life in the old dog yet. Sean has had a few turbo issues this weekend. Hopefully he's got to the bottom of them. If he hasn't, at least horsepower doesn't matter quite as much in the wet conditions, but Sean will be looking for more experience in what is only his second ever race meeting in a front-wheel drive touring car, or front-wheel drive car of any sort for that matter. So the cars then make their way down towards the Robert Chicane. 15 minutes of racing is ahead of us, and we could be 15 minutes away from crowning, provisionally at least, our first ever TCR UK champion. Dan Lloyd, if he beats Ollie Taylor and they're anywhere within the top 4 positions, then even if he only beats Ollie by 1 position on the track, it will be enough to secure the title with a race to spare. But in these sort of conditions, anything can happen, and I can't stress that enough. This is so tricky. In Donington Park, it has this quality to it that it gets very slippery when it's wet, which I know sounds obvious, but because it's right next to an airport, there is this bit of a myth, but there seems to be some truth to it, that there's a link between the planes flying overhead and sort of dropping something on the track that makes it very slippery when wet. So this is going to be a very entertaining race, I'm sure. The red lights are about to come on. The penultimate round of the TCR UK Championship for 2018 gets underway now, and it's a good start made by Dan Lloyd from pole position. Jessica Beckman is slow away though, so Ollie Taylor, I think, may well have picked off one of the Golfs already. No, still wheel to wheel down towards Redgate Corner for the first time, but he does go ahead under braking, so it's Lloyd from Andreas Beckman. Taylor up a position already to 3rd and gets sideways. Ollie Taylor sideways at the first corner. Off onto the grass he goes. Carl Swift is off as well. Oh, Ollie Taylor, just as he was making progress. That is how slippery it is though. He turned into Redgate Corner and the rear of the car came straight around. So Ollie Taylor rejoins undamaged, but a long way down the order. It's Lloyd that leads the way. It's Andreas Beckman second. It's Jessica Beckman 3rd and sideways. And look at Josh Price. Josh Price onto the podium now as Jessica Beckman is on the grass as well. She'll start dropping down the order, but Josh Price from 10th on the grid is running 3rd halfway around the opening lap. Phenomenal start from Josh Price in his 3rd appearance in that car this year, and he's not necessarily felt that it's been the most competitive car out there at points this season, but the wet is a great leveller and he's out there just to try and get as good a result as he can. He's into 3rd place now. Finley Crocker is 4th, Lewis Kent is 5th and sideways, with Stuart Lyons up the inside, and then Jessica Beckman and Ollie Taylor together, so they're some way down the order. So too Carl Swift. These are all the drivers that had dramas on the opening half a lap or so. Well, I did say this was going to be a dramatic 15 minutes of racing, and it's proving to be so already, but Dan Lloyd has done the job that he needed to off the line. He is leading the way. Andreas Beckman is in second place. Ollie Taylor up the inside of Jessica, I noticed there, and I think had managed to pick that place off, but really now his job is looking almost impossible, isn't it? Can he possibly get back to the front of the field to challenge Dan Lloyd? He comes across the line, Ollie Taylor in 6th position. That damage on Jessica Beckman's car getting worse, unfortunately, now, and in a way, it will be better for her if that bit of bodywork was to fly off completely, because if it stays loose like that, it will attract the attention of the clerk of the course. The lead gap for Dan Lloyd, 1.4 seconds over Andreas Beckman in second, and Josh Price starting to breathe down his neck slightly. Then it's Crocker 4th, then it's Lyons 5th, and look at Ollie Taylor. The attitude of that car tells you that he is on a mission to try and regain that lost ground. He's only got 13 minutes, just less than 13 minutes to do it. It's going to be a tough ask, but Dan Lloyd still has to try and survive the conditions out in front. He still has to make sure that he doesn't put a foot wrong. It's very easy just to catch a bit of standing water, catch a painted white line or a curb, which is like ice in the wet, and the next thing you know, you're off the track and traipsing through the gravel, as Ollie Taylor was at the very first corner. Out of coppice comes Dan Lloyd, and he works his way down the exhibition straight, but for second place, I think it might be side by side. Josh Price looking to the inside of Andreas Beckman. He is alongside almost, but Andreas just gets over to defend. This is looking like it's going to be a very interesting battle, and Josh Price has pace. Now, if he gets past Andreas, he could possibly be a bit of an unexpected challenger to Dan Lloyd at the front of the field. Out of the chicane they come, Price with a better run through the middle of the corner, but really had nowhere to go with it and sort of almost ran into the back of Andreas Beckman. That costs him momentum onto the straight, so Andreas stays in front for now, but Price, again, the attitude of the car, he looks very racy here, doesn't he? Both of them taking that wide line through Redgate. That's where the grip is in the wetter conditions. You don't tend to run the traditional racing lines, because where all the rubber has built up on the racing line, it actually gets very slippery in the wet. It's a strange phenomenon, but that's why you see the drivers in wet conditions running right around the edge of the track, which is great because that's where the grip is, but it also means that you've got less margin for error should you make a mistake, because you're right by the edge of the road, and once you're on the grass in these conditions, you have very little control over your car at all. Back out of the old hairpin they go. This battle for second place is really playing into the hands of Dan Lloyd, though. He was 3.5 seconds clear at the end of only the second lap of racing. The quicker that Josh Price gets past Andreas Beckman, the more chance he will have of going after Dan and maybe challenging for his first victory and to become the 5th different winner of the season. Both of the West Coast racing cars in front of Josh Price, of course, have won races this year. Andreas getting his first and so far only win, last time out at Croft. The next man on Ollie Taylor's hit list is Stuart Lyons, which I'm sure he's thrilled to see, because Stuart is not the easiest of people to overtake. He is a very strong defensive driver, and he'll make that Cupra as wide as he possibly can. Andreas Beckman is making his Golf pretty wide as well, because still Josh Price, who had that scintillating run up the order on the opening lap, has now come unstuck. He can't find a way past the young Swedish driver. He draws alongside again, briefly coming out of the chicane, but just can't quite draw fully alongside on the outside line. In the background, meanwhile, I noticed that Ollie Taylor has gone past Stuart Lyons. So Taylor is now 5th, but to reiterate, that is still nowhere near enough to keep the championship alive going into the final race. Realistically, it looks as though he's going to have to hope that something happens to Dan Lloyd here, because Dan is now 5.4 seconds clear of this battle for second position. Now, the next car that Ollie Taylor will have to overtake is Finlay Crocker in the Verizon Connect car, who maybe will not be the hardest driver that he has to overtake all weekend long. I'm sure that Finlay won't want to make life too difficult for Ollie. The other thing to factor into all this as well is that mathematically Andreas Beckman can actually still beat Ollie Taylor to second in the championship, so that adds extra significance to this battle, because if Andreas can hang on to second place and score 35 points, then I don't think it's quite enough actually to keep that alive into the last race, but if Ollie were to not score at all, it could make a difference. Through coppice they go again. Beckman still second, Price third, and just seems to have superior traction off the corners, just nowhere to go with it. Andreas, you wouldn't believe this is his first ever season of circuit racing. He and his sister Jessica coming from a rallycross background, and they've been doing a dual campaign, racing in TCR UK and TCR Scandinavia. They've had plenty of success, actually, plenty of podiums for the pair of them over here in the UK, and Andreas and Jessica both really improving as the year's gone on. Down towards Redgate goes Dan Lloyd. He crosses the line, this time 6.3 seconds ahead of Andreas Beckman in second position, who is just 0.3 of a second ahead of Josh Price. Finlay Crocker behind them just set a personal best lap and was actually quicker than the two cars in front of him. And Ollie Taylor in 5th, well, he has to gain another 2.2 seconds just to get onto the tail of Finlay Crocker. Then he's got to try and overtake him and go after the two cars in front. If he can get on the podium, it would actually be a terrific fight back for Ollie Taylor, regardless of what the championship situation is. Josh Price has found a gap finally up the inside of Andreas Beckman. He goes into second place, and as long as he doesn't run too wide on the exit, which he doesn't, he will make that one stick. So Price is now released into second position, but he's over 6 seconds down the road from the race leader, and with only 8 minutes and 40 seconds left on the clock, he'd be hard pushed surely to catch Dan Lloyd. He's certainly going to give it a go though. Already you can see that he's opening some daylight now between himself and Andreas Beckman in third position. And Finley Crocker, who got his first ever podium in TCR racing at Croft last time out, well, he can sniff another one now in fourth. Again, Finley really improving his pace ever since returning to the championship, really, because remember he missed Alton Park, did Finley, due to business commitments, but ever since he came back at Croft last time out, he's been a different man and a podium contender again here today. Well, across the line is coming Dan Lloyd, and he's having a very lonely race, but actually I think he's quite happy about that, because this is all he needs to do to wrap up the title and take the pressure off going into the final race. But is he going to receive some pressure here from Josh Price? Well, let's have a look at the times. 7.6 seconds is the gap with 8 minutes to go. So can he get there? It's a big ask, that. It's a really big ask. He'd have to be taking over a second a lap out of Dan Lloyd, and not many people can take over a second a lap out of Dan Lloyd in any conditions. Dan out there on his own, he's got his head down, he's clearly got the wet setup working well on his Golf. But Josh Price's car is looking pretty rapid as well, so as he drops down in towards the old hairpin, we'll watch his lap times with interest. In the first sector, he is fractionally quicker than Dan Lloyd on this lap, but we're talking a couple of hundredths, that's all. Taylor, meanwhile, as we go into the second half of this race now, is running fifth. He took about half a second that time out of Finley Crocker, so he's not making enormous inroads into the similar FK8 Civic Type R, as it runs through McLean's, but you can see that he's definitely getting a bit closer now to the Verizon Connect racing car. Finley Crocker with his headlights ablaze, as indeed is mandatory for all of the cars in the wet and slippery conditions. When the visibility is down, headlights must be on to try and improve visibility as much as they can. Back down the exhibition straight they go, and through the middle sector, Josh Price is about 6/10 slower than Dan Lloyd, so it doesn't look as though Josh has quite got the pace to go after the race leader. There is the race leader and champion-elect, maybe we can start calling Dan Lloyd now, because with less than half the race to go, he's looking very good here. Josh Price pulling off to the side of the road with problems. Josh Price has got a problem. The Civic pulling off to the side. I thought at first that he was looking for the wetter side of the road to try and cool the tyres down. But, well, now, hang on. Then, all of a sudden, he pulls back onto the racing line. Now, is that an issue, or what was Josh Price doing? He's back up to speed now, I think, isn't he? He's let the other Hondas through. Now, I'm not suggesting necessarily that that was an intentional sort of team play, because remember, he is not being run by Pyro Motorsport. He has no real affiliation with Ollie Taylor, but if he is letting Ollie Taylor go through, then, well, maybe that's Hondas banding together. Who knows? We'll watch with interest now to see whether or not the pace picks back up again for Josh Price. But maybe having realised that he wasn't going to catch the race leader, he's decided to give some places up. Let's see, up towards McLean's they go. There's Ollie Taylor. Is Josh Price still behind him? No, he's not, so it was a problem for Josh. I thought it must have been a problem. It was very strange if he was just letting people go. So Price, unfortunately, had issues last time he was racing in the championship as well at Brands Hatch. The car wasn't all that mechanically sound, and it would appear similar issues here. Well, that's another position for Ollie Taylor, though, so it puts Taylor now into fourth place, within reach of a podium at least, because Finley Crocker at the start of this lap was only a second in front of him. I'd say that's come down by another few tenths on this lap. Dan Lloyd, though, now opens up an enormous lead over his teammate Andreas Beckman, who will re-inherit second position as a result of Josh Price's woes. The gap officially is 11.3 seconds between the top two now, but these three are getting themselves together. Andreas Beckman in second, Finley Crocker now into a podium position again. Now, what does Finley do? Does he let Taylor go through without too much of a fight, or does he focus instead on challenging Beckman for second? I think he's got to go with the latter, because Finley Crocker is showing good pace here in the wet, the first wet race of the year, and the Scottish driver starts moving right towards the front of the field. I think you can see what I'm suggesting there. Finley Crocker maybe has a bit of experience of racing in slippery conditions. Mind you, the Swedish driver Andreas Beckman's probably known a wet track or two in his time of racing, so they both should be fairly well acclimatised to the conditions, but Crocker certainly seems to have better pace at this stage of the race, and is now only a couple of car lengths behind Andreas as they turn down towards McLean's. Good exit from the turn there for Finley. Can't quite draw alongside for the time being, though, so whilst we're waiting for this to develop further, I believe there is some news in the pit lane from Brim.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. As you can see, Josh Price has just come into the pits. So the problem earlier on, just a lap ago, in fact, was an oil pressure light came on. It cut the power to the car, and they managed to sort of restart the car and get it going again. But as you can see, engine off, and I think Josh, yes, steering wheel's off. Josh is getting out of the car. So that's the end of his race.
Oh, that's a real shame for Josh Price, who had been the man of the moment, really, hadn't he? Working his way through into second position from 10th on the grid. And unfortunately, mechanical woes sidelining him just into the second half of the race. Well, just under 4 minutes remain in the race, and it's now all about this three-way battle for second. Andreas Beckman has it. Finley Crocker wants it, and nearly had a chance to take it, actually, there at Redgate Corner, because Andreas is starting to experiment, starting to try and search for some grippier lines, and that tantalisingly opened the door there for Finley up the inside at Redgate, but he couldn't get through. So Beckman holding on in certain parts of the circuit. I think Andreas is fine, but there are certain areas. I noticed he had a slide down here a lap ago, and another one this time through the old hairpins. I think through the high-speed corners, that's where Finley has an edge, and you can see that the Civic, with really good stability through the old hairpin, closed right in and starts to build up for another attack. Towards McLean's they will go. 3 minutes left on the clock, and Andreas Beckman will be given a real workover for the remaining 3 minutes by Finley Crocker, who has caught the taste for podium finishes now. He's already actually on for another podium. He's in third as it is, but a second place would be even tastier. As Stuart Lyons, he's running in 5th position at the moment, ahead of Jessica Beckman still. She's 6th. Carl Swift is 7th, and has said that he's really just trying to survive this race in one piece, knowing that he's on pole position for the final round of the season a bit later on this afternoon. Lewis Kent is 8th, Sean Walkinger is 9th, and of course Josh Price and Darrell Wilson both watching from the sidelines, unfortunately, as this man, the man we just saw, Dan Lloyd, sets a new fastest lap of the race, 1:21.470. It's not worth any bonus points in this championship, but it's worth a bit of pride, and he's proving once again to be the class of the field here this weekend, come rain or shine. And Dan Lloyd on the verge of the title. He's 14 seconds ahead now of that battle for second place, which is still in the same order. Andreas Beckman ahead of Finley Crocker, ahead of Ollie Taylor, who, having sort of arrived to within a second or so of the tail of Finley Crocker, then doesn't really seem to have been able to do anything about him. So Ollie Taylor just struggling a little, it would seem, in this race. Doesn't quite have the pace that he would like or need. Andreas Beckman really experimenting with a wide line down at the old hairpin. I'm convinced that worked, though, because I think Finley was a bit quicker off the corner again. Can Finley Crocker move into second position? How much of a risk will he be wanting to take? That's the other question, because Finley, like all of these drivers, will have one eye towards race 2 later on. And if the car gets damaged now, then it may well put a question mark under your participation in the second race. So they'll both want to try and keep this clean, but they're both racing drivers, and Finley definitely looks to be the quicker. Very different lines as they come out of Coppice. Andreas cutting across to the second apex to try and block off any potential run that Finley was getting. But I think we're about to go on to the final lap of the race. Dan Lloyd crosses the start-finish line now with 1 minute and 13 seconds left on the clock, and they're lapping in the 1:21, so this will be the final lap of the race. One more lap before Dan Lloyd provisionally maybe crowned the champion. One more lap before Andreas Beckman maybe gets a second place finish, but Finley Crocker is still within striking range here. Down towards Redgate they go. They're dropping Ollie Taylor now. Ollie was about 4/10 slower that time around, so it looks like it's one of these two that will be on the second step of the podium. The question is, which one? Will it be a Golf? Will it be a Civic? We'll find out in about a minute's time as they round Redgate through Hollywood, back down the Craner curves. 15.3 seconds, as you can see, they are behind this man, Dan Lloyd. He works his way back up the hill towards the left-hander at Schwantz curve. Now, this is the part of the circuit where Finley seems to have been fairly strong. They both actually take a very tight line that time into the old hairpin. Dan Lloyd, though, working his way back up the hill, as this battle does likewise. And actually, having said that, that's where Finley's been a bit quicker than Andreas all race. On this occasion, Andreas seems to have found something, because he's pulled clear once again, barring a mistake. It looks like he's okay in second place, and in fact the mistake nearly came from Finley Crocker there as he threw the car sideways through McLean's. For Dan Lloyd, though, there are no such problems. He may have had to wait a little longer than many people predicted that he would have to wait to win the championship, but provisionally a race win in the penultimate round of the championship in 2018 means that Dan is your first ever TCR UK champion. Congratulations, Dan Lloyd. Congratulations, West Coast Racing, who had already been confirmed as the team's champions as well. And Dan Lloyd finally can relax and can celebrate, because this is a championship that many people said he should have won maybe a few rounds ago, but things outside of his control really in some ways have conspired against him. And finally, at the last round of the championship, Dan provisionally is crowned the champion. A fantastic drive, a sublime drive really, in very difficult conditions for Dan. Ollie Taylor gave it his everything, but unfortunately 4th place is not enough to keep it alive, and he'll be ruining that first corner where he slid off the road and left himself with far too much work to do. And in the end, a 4th place is all that Ollie can manage. West Coast Racing won 2 as well, with Andreas Beckmann hanging on to that 2nd place by, in the end, actually 3/4 of a second. It was a fairly healthy margin that he held over Crocker in 3rd, and Ollie Taylor 4th, Stuart Lyons is 5th, Jessica Beckmann 6th, Lewis Kent 7th, Carl Swift in 8th, and Sean Walkinshaw will come home in 9th, the last of the finishers. Well, a fantastic drive from Dan Lloyd, and a deserving champion. He has won, of course, far more races than anybody else so far this year, and the West Coast Racing squad can be very proud of themselves. And down with the West Coast Racing squad, and in particular James Nixon from West Coast Racing, is Bryn.
Yeah, I was with the entire team, but they've run away, leaving me with James. James, congratulations. That must mean a heck of a lot to you all.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's really great. What a race. He showed his class there, that's for sure.
It really was. It was a championship drive, really, from the champion-elect or the provisional champion. But he knew what he had to do, and he just put it all together, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see once you're in the zone, and he put his times together. I mean, the engineers are talking to him all the time, but he needed to drive quickly, and with the conditions like this, he showed his performance there.
And absolutely. And as a team, I mean, you won the team's title last time out, so it must be nice to tie it all up with one race to go.
Yeah, exactly. Now we can breathe a little bit and relax a bit. It's great for the guys. They've done a super job, really hard work, and they deserve that.
Great stuff. Well done.
Thank you, mate.
There you go. So James telling us what we knew, really, about how amazing Dan was during that race, and has been through the entire season, really. Andy, we're going to get a word with all the drivers when they come back in, so I'll go and get the drivers and hand back to you right now.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bryn. That's Dan Lloyd's 8th win of the season. It's his first win, though, since Castle Combe at the 4th meeting of the year. Remember, Dan had this remarkable run of 6 wins in the first 6 races of the year. He won the 7th and 8th races on the road, but was later penalised for round number 7 after last lap contact with Ollie Taylor, if you remember, back at Castle Combe. But then Alton Park and Croft really did not go his way. In fact, things just got progressively worse through those couple of meetings. There were a few bits of contact, a few penalties, and of course that suspension failure in race 2 at Croft. And Dan must have woken up this morning thinking, well, what's going to happen next? You know, surely there's one last twist in the tail here of this season, but as it happens, it was his rival, Ollie Taylor, who made the slip, who made the mistake at the first corner, and it was easily done, and I don't think Ollie can be too hard on himself for that, really, because in those conditions, I mean, he was far from the only one that slipped off the road in the early going, but unfortunately, it just put him that bit too far back to ever realistically have a chance of catching this man, your 2018 TCR UK champion. Dan Lloyd has driven brilliantly this season, and despite the couple of hiccups that he's had in the last couple of rounds, there is no denying that Dan is a deserving champion, the inaugural champion of TCR UK. Dan, someone who we knew coming into the season was going to be a force to be reckoned with, and in those early rounds it was always a bit questionable. Was he going to be here? You know, budget was an issue, finding sponsors was an issue, but Dan has thankfully been able to stick around for the entire year, and this is his reward, the championship, provisionally at least, with 1 race to spare. Andreas Beckmann will join him on the podium. Finlay Crocker gets his 2nd podium finish of the year, and in fact his 2nd in a row as well. The other interesting championship battle that was going on this weekend was for 4th place between Jessica Beckmann and Lewis Kent. Jessica went into that race 12 points ahead of Lewis, and of course she beat him in that race as well. So Jessica, by my reckoning, will now be 14 points ahead of Lewis Kent, but that is still definitely up for grabs. And with the reversed grid for race number 2, Lewis actually starts several positions in front of Jessica, so that's going to be where a lot of the interest is in the final round. Well, there is confirmation then. Dan Lloyd is now 50 points ahead of Ollie Taylor, with just 40 points remaining for a win in race number 2. So he is your provisional TCR UK champion. Ollie Taylor is, though, secure in 2nd position, and likewise Andreas Beckmann cannot be caught for 3rd. There is the confirmation, though, of how close it is for 4th. Jessica Beckmann on 279 points, Lewis Kent on 265, so that is doable. If Lewis can beat Jessica by a few places in race 2, he could move up a position. Stuart Lyons, likewise, is not a million miles ahead of Finley Crocker, just 11 points separating those two in 6th and 7th, with Carl Swift 8th and on pole for race number 2, remember. Darryl Wilson, unfortunately, a non-starter in that one. Hopefully they'll get the Astra fixed for race 2. Derek Palmer, despite the fact that he's not racing here this weekend, he's inside the top 10 in the championship. So, deep breaths, everyone. We got there in the end. We've had to wait quite a long time to get this race underway. But we have had a race, we've had a winner, and provisionally, Bryn, we have a champion.
Yeah, a champion indeed, as you were saying there, Andy. Hasn't won a race since Castle Combe, so I know it's been quite frustrating. I don't want to rub salt into the wounds there, but I know, but I've got to build it to a positive, you know I do. And Dan was looking very focused over the course of this weekend, and I think proved a massive, massive point about what pace you have. That was a phenomenal drive in these conditions.
Yeah, just over the moon. It's been what feels like fairly long summer. We got to such a great start, and then through a few reasons of carrying a lot of weight, ballast and penalty points and a failure at Croft, you know, it started going the other way. But I just kept focused, kept positive, and, you know, just did everything I could and make sure I put everything into it. And the team have been faultless, you know, West Coast Racing team, I owe it all to them. You know, I wouldn't have had this opportunity if it wasn't for the team giving me it. It was only supposed to be a one-race deal, and we went from there to build on from that. So I owe everything to James Nixon and Dick Johnson. They've done a mega job.
But you've had 8 wins out of 13 races this season, and so therefore it does stamp your authority, and you have been pretty phenomenal. And we thought after 6 races that you were going to win it after 8, you know, and it was one of those incredible seasons that unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the most experience in these cars. I did TCR International. You know, on paper, everyone says I should win it, but it comes with a different type of pressure when it's expected of you. But, you know, I'm pleased about what we've done this year. Championship for the first season. It's had its ups and downs, but what I'd like to say is if it wasn't for this championship, I wouldn't have even started racing anything this year. It's led on to other very good things as well, racing in other championships. It's brought on new sponsors. So whether it's a huge championship or a smaller one, it's what you make of it. So yeah, I'm just really pleased about what we've done behind the scenes. We brought on a new sponsor, Brax Tools Accessories and Mender Hose and ProPack, and yeah, just thank them guys. There was a part through the season where we weren't going to continue because of budget, and it was their support that meant I could continue.
It's been an absolute pleasure watching you race this season. We've got one more race to go, but I think you need to kind of relax a bit and smile a bit and, you know, pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, definitely. I've done enough relaxing today. But yeah, just mega. Thanks again to everyone, and thanks for all the comments. Been loads of comments on Twitter and Facebook today and everything like that, so really appreciate it.
Congratulations there. Provisional champion, Dan Lloyd.
Provisional, yeah. Might get done for something.
No, don't talk like that. Well done there, Dan. Let's get in second place then. Well done to Andreas. Andreas, another brilliant drive from yourself. I mean, Dan was way ahead and he'd gone, but that was incredible from you as well.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased with the result. It was a really good race. I had a really good start, and then from that I tried to follow Dan, but he was a bit faster than me, so I tried to just finish in second in the end, so it was a good race.
But of course you had your sister right behind you, and Ollie behind that as well. It was all kicking off at the start as well. You really had to keep your wits about you.
Yeah, the start was really intense. I had a really good start, so I could follow Dan into turn 1, but then I had a gap up to Jessica and behind, but it was good, yeah.
And after Croft, it just builds on what you've had so far this season. It's been a great season so far, and you've got one more race to go.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with this year. It has been a really good year, and congrats to Dan for his victory. It was really great from him this year.
Well done. Well, we'll see you in the next race.
Thank you very much.
It goes onwards and upwards. Let's get hold of the big man, Finley Crocker. Wow, Finley Crocker, that builds on, I think, a pretty impressive Croft. We weren't shocked by Croft, but we were pretty... Well, I was, all right. I was shocked by Croft, no, all right. But you did show a different side of you at Croft, and you've done it again here today.
Yeah, like I said then, you know, you don't come doing this if you don't think you can actually do something, and I believe that we can. And the wet, I was a bit apprehensive, I won't tell you any lies, and going around the first couple of corners, I was beginning to question the sensibility of doing what we were doing, but as, you know, luck ran our way a little bit there, but we actually to be honest, genuinely had the pace, and I thought we were going to. Andreas was obviously struggling for drive out 1 or 2 corners where we were stronger. I just wasn't strong enough in 1 or 2 other places. But we made a couple of changes on the grid, and it goes without saying I won't tell you what they were, but it was the right way to go, and the car got better as the race went on, and yeah, really good, really enjoyed it.
Are you proud of him?
Yes.
That means a lot, doesn't it?
That's my mascot. He's every time he's out there, we do quite well, so we'll keep him coming.
Well done, Finley.
Thank you. Cheers.
There we go. So the top 3. We'll try and grab Ollie at some point, but they've got to go off to the podium, and they've got to do it all again for another race in just a bit. It was a pretty amazing race. Josh Price was looking very, very good out there until the last moments. I don't know what you thought of it, Andy, but I think we need to sit down now and have a breather and take stock.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, that, was it? That was a fitting way for Dan Lloyd to take the championship as well, because in theory he didn't have to win that race to secure the title, but it's always nice when a champion puts in a champion's drive and wins the race and wins the championship, and that's what Dan did. And congratulations to Dan and the whole West Coast Racing squad, because they have put on a bit of a clinic this year. They've had tough times, yes, but then so have all of the teams. But when they're good, they really are unbeatable, and Dan Lloyd has put in, as he would say, a mega performance this year, and yeah, a great worthy champion in Dan. But now we look ahead to race number 2 later on, where the points will matter for 1 or 2. As I said, there are a couple of positions up for grabs within the top half dozen or so in the championship, but really it's all about rounding off the season in style, and with a reverse grid, I'm sure we will. Well, for this race, it was all about the first corner. Dan Lloyd got the launch, got the lead. Andreas Beckman briefly challenged, but Dan it was that led from lights to flag. Ollie Taylor made a great start, was going after his championship rival, but then lost the rear of the car. Both he and Carl Swift falling foul of the conditions at the first corner. They were not the only ones on the early laps, though, who fell into trouble. Jessica Beckman was off down at the old hairpin, and that allowed Josh Price through. Josh was making great progress up the order from 10th position into 3rd within half a lap. He set off then after the West Coast Racing cars in front, whilst Ollie Taylor began a recovery drive after the early off. Josh Price, though, unfortunately, having got into 2nd position ahead of Andreas Beckman, pulled off to the side of the road. An oil pressure warning light had come up and cut the power to the car. This all allowed Dan Lloyd to continue serenely on his way to his 8th race victory of the season and his first TCR UK title. A fantastic drive from Dan Lloyd. Andreas Beckman came home 2nd, making a West Coast Racing 1-2, with Finley Crocker taking his 2nd podium finish of the year. Well, all of the excitement of the championship battle, that may all be done and dusted now, but there is plenty more excitement to come. Another race coming up later on today, remember. We're hoping to get that one underway at about 5 to 5, so make sure you don't miss it, because with the title now wrapped up, there are a few scores to settle, I think, and in conditions that are likely to still be fairly damp. The rain appears to have died down a little, maybe, but I think it's fairly safe to say the track will be wet for race 2. We could have another really exciting race, and as I said, with the reversed grid that sees Carl Swift on pole position, could we maybe get our 5th different winner of the season? Well, there are going to be quite a few contenders at the front of the grid for race 2 who will be hoping to achieve just that. We've actually had 19 different drivers have raced in the championship this year, 18 of whom have scored points. But this is our penultimate podium presentation of the year, and Finley Crocker it is who comes home 3rd. Andreas Beckman heads up, shakes his hand, gets onto the 2nd step of the podium as well, and a really great drive it was from Andreas to keep the charging Finley Crocker behind, and nearly managed to keep Josh Price at bay as well. However, your race winner and your champion is Dan Lloyd, and in fitting fashion, Dan Lloyd provisionally wraps up the 2018 championship hunt with a race victory, and now he'll want to try and add to that 8 wins for the season in the final race of the year later on. I'm sure with the pressure of the championship battle now off, he can go racing and try to get another double race victory. If he could do it, it would be his 4th double victory of the year, remarkably, and often when he wins race 1, he does seem to be able to work his way through from the reverse grid and win race 2 as well. Well, a great sight and a great moment, a historic moment in British motorsport, the first ever season of TCR UK, and we have our first ever champion. West Coast Racing, the winning team as well, of course, and they are the team's champions. That was actually confirmed back at Croft last time out. I think they're quite happy about that, and as well they might be, because West Coast Racing, who have lots of experience internationally in touring car racing, they haven't really done much in the UK, but really making a bit of a name for themselves this season with their pretty dominant showing across the course of 2018. Well, the pressure is off now, the race is done, there's one more race to go, but it's going to be a fascinating encounter later on this afternoon. As I said, about 5 to 5 we should hopefully get the race started. Build-up will begin from about 22, so make sure you join us for the final race of the season for TCR UK a bit later on. And will we get another different winner? Will Dan Lloyd be able to get another double victory? What's going to happen? Well, we'll find out in, actually, not that long, because of the delays we've had to the timetable this weekend. They're cramming an awful lot into the afternoon here at Donington Park, so they don't have that much time to wait. And for those who had issues in this race, they don't have that long to get those issues fixed. So we'll have to wait and see who we get out for race 2. Hopefully, though, we get a full quota of cars. So, in wet and miserable conditions, a very happy Dan Lloyd takes the victory and provisionally the championship by 16.7 seconds in the end over Andreas Beckman in second, with Finlay Crocker in third, his second podium of the year. Ollie Taylor's fourth place isn't enough to keep his, what were fairly slim championship hopes alive. He now will go into the final race looking for a bit of redemption, maybe looking to round out his season with a victory. Stuart Lyons will be fifth, sixth place was Jessica Beckman, seventh for Lewis Kent, eighth for Carl Swift, who will start on pole later on this afternoon. Sean Walkinshaw was ninth, and then unfortunately Josh Price a retirement, whilst Darryl Wilson was a non-starter, and we'll try to find out between the races exactly what the issues were for those two drivers. Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon at a wet Donington Park. There is one more race to go in the first ever season of TCR UK. Make sure you don't miss it. We'll start the build-up at about 20 to 5. You definitely want to join us. It's going to be a good one.